Going to start with this side. This is the castle nut for the tie rod end. A whole bunch of the time Honda they'll put a cotter pin in it, or whichever thing you prefer to call it. It's actually a straight pin, spring metal with a round end, so it goes in and clips around instead of this aircraft style bent up, bent down, and then around the bottom. So as usual, try to take care of your parts as you take them apart. So as I pointed out to a friend, yes, I'm going to replace those, but if you're a little bit careful, you don't mess up the threads on your tie rod end or your other joint on your lower control arm, your ball joint. That causes you to have a bad day. As I mentioned earlier, the ride height on this one I had to adjust. It's not in the pin compared to that one. And this car being built in Japan, the paint scheme is different for the same side wishbone. So there's some orange in there along with white. So I'm gonna try this again. I'll try to throw that in the shade. Okay. So can you see the gap that I'm talking about? Compared to that side. So the dealership told me it's because of the air conditioning compressor. I figured it was just because on the boat ride over that it moved. So that strut moved up in that pinch bolt, you know, at whatever height they had it at. So I moved it up just a little bit, and it's been like that since the car was new. So I'm going to try to show this to you in the cramped confines over here. So you want to put your tie rod removing tool on there and try not to rupture your boot. And you don't want to use your castle nut. Get you a nut that fits on the bottom. In this case, I have one. Because you'll damage your castle nut. If you damage your castle nut, then you'll have trouble getting it off of there. So let's see if I can do this one-handed with my tool, with my wrench, and show you what happens. It comes off rather dramatically. So it's a press basically, and it presses against one part and pushes the tie rod in as well as your ball joint straight up so it'll come out. Sometimes giving it a little tap also helps. Yeah, I'm always apprehensive when it does that. So the ball joint does the same thing because they're in there pretty tight. Yeah, if you've never done that, well, then you're in for a treat. But you have to have a tool. You just can't beat it out of there. You'll tear everything up. Well, it's raining, and besides the compressor, there's some hail falling right here. You can see it bouncing in the grass sometimes. So it's on the engine stand, and yes, that's an air conditioning unit behind it. I wouldn't be able to work out here in this carport without it. So those long bolts that go in the forks or those struts, I use that with those sockets that you don't hardly ever use, you know, like a 15 and a 16 as a spacer. So when it's on the stand and I flip it upside down, it'll make it easier to get to that one piece rear main seal that I'm going to change out. So again, that's that block plug that you use, that you take out to drain the block. So I have yet to drain the oil out of this motor, but that's what I'm fixing to do. And as you can see, the wiring harness and everything stayed on there except for the starter cable nut and the starter solenoid and the speed sensor that goes in the transmission. So I'll drain the engine oil, and then I'll be able to flip it upside down. And I'll change the seal on the crank and then the cam. And replace all the seals and start over. Should be ready to go in the other car. Thanks for watching this part.
So the trick is supposed to be drill a hole
In the seal, put a screw in it, and then it pushes it out. And then, according to another YouTuber that I watch all the time, you put grease behind the seal, and that's supposed to keep the ring from getting too deformed on there. I'll have to see about cleaning all of that up before the new one goes on. And what's crazy is when this car had 90,000 miles on it, I changed the timing belt. Well, I stuck a tool in the timing, the gear cam, and it was the aluminum spoke one, not this stamped steel one, and broke it. So when I went to Honda, they gave me this PMD3 code, and I've never been able to get the belt timed up correctly on this car from Japan. Because when you put it like that on the cam, with that part sitting straight up, there's supposed to be a pointer that goes to there. Well, it doesn't line up like that. And then the crank, of course, doesn't line up. It's always out of alignment.